Okay, welcome back to Virginia Free Interviews the candidates for the primaries. Now we have with us in the 56th district, running to be the replacement of Delegate Peter Farrell, who's not seeking reelection, is attorney Matt Pinsker, who is a native of this district, who went to Godwin High School, where our kids go to school, and now lives in the Deep Run district. So it's a suburban Richmond district. Matt, introduce yourself, and we'll get going.
Hi, everyone. My name's Matt Pinsker. As I was introduced, I was born and raised out here. I went to Godwin High School. My mother went to Douglas Freeman. My wife and I now have a home out in the far west end by Deep Run. I am a business owner, have my own law practice out here by Broad and Gaskins. I had to close it down once because of the Army, came back home, rebuilt it. My father had a business out here, and my grandfather started a business down in Petersburg. So the entire family's been doing business out here for quite a while. I'd like to see, Virginia remain business friendly for generations to come.
I'd like to hear that. Double thumbs up on that notion. You graduated Godwin, went to William and Mary, West Virginia Law School, and Army. You're in the Army or Army Reserves?
I'm a captain in the Army Reserves, Judge Advocate General Corps, so
Okay.
I'm an Army lawyer.
You're an Army lawyer. Okay, very good, very good.
I like to keep the JAG, but a little different.
I understand. No, I had very good friends in the JAG Corps, in the Army and the Navy, growing up. Matt, why are you running for the House of Delegates?
There's a lot of reasons. I said this is my home where I grew up, and I'm seeing a lot of things that I'm not too thrilled about going on with the leadership here in Virginia, especially in the executive. Now, I said I built my own business up, but I spent a lot of time dealing with government regulations, paying a lot of taxes, have to hire someone to do a simple payroll, and a lot more. I'd rather spend my time, instead of dealing with regulations, focusing on my business. I'd rather spend that money instead of paying taxes to grow and expand my business. I'm probably not the only person here who feels that way. That's
Well,
what really.
no,
Sure.
there's a regulatory burden hits a lot of folks. What since you went down that road and you have a small business background and you have one of your own, um, let's talk about some of the small business issues and regulations. A number of bills were put in this year that were uh, geared towards regulatory reform, but not really in concert with the business community and getting a lot of support for it. So they sort of died out there, even though they're well intended, that they weren't really well thought out. Any reflection on that?
Well, again, there's also a concern that there will be a lot of vetoes coming from the governor who's set the record. So that might be another reason as well. And there are definitely a lot of lawyers in there in the General Assembly, but I'm not just a lawyer. I have own operated business. I'm not just building out a law firm. I think there's a lot of people who just don't understand the nuts and bolts. It's really not a partisan issue. It's just something that you need to maybe hands-on experience dealing with. So you have an appreciation for how regulations and taxes will affect a business. If you're a regular employee being paid, you're not as affected as directly when you're have a managerial role, or let alone the owner.
But you've seen that up close and personal, having to actually do it. Most people don't. But I was struck by some of the conversations we've had with other candidates about, they talk about the regulatory burden on teachers, with federal regulations and state regulations and local this. Anyone seems to be burdened by the amount of constraints, I guess you will, or direction from government. And but I think what the business community is looking for, frankly, is some level of thoughtful pursuit of right sizing an appropriate level of regulation. Is that a fair assessment of what you're seeing on the campaign trail?
Well, I want to be sure I'm not misinterpreting your question or your statement, but the general idea is that we obviously need some regulations here. We can't just have complete anarchy in the business world, but we do need rules and regulations that will promote growth, promote business. I mean, we can't get around taxes. We can't get around regulations. We just have to make sure that they make sense and are working for everyone.
Right, right, exactly. Let's talk about education. You talked about it in with respect to where you went to school around here. You've had a pretty good run of it in higher education. Let's talk about K-12. What are your thoughts on K through 12 right now?
I'm very worried. I'm an adjunct professor at VCU. I teach Homeland Security and Criminal Justice. A lot of my students are going on to military, law enforcement, FBI, CIA, you name it. And a lot of my students who are juniors and seniors in college can't even write a research paper. I actually had to drop having a research paper as part of my syllabus because it took too much time trying to teach college students how you do research, how to look things up, how to cite a source. And this is a skill that they should, at least a senior college, should already know how to do. And I
Seniors
found
in college.
they did not know how to do a research paper,
Wow.
and I hated doing it, but I had to drop it from the syllabus because it took too much time away from other things we had to focus on. So, I mean, that's something that really worries me about what's being taught. I mean, we need students who are going through K through 12 who are learning good skills that are applicable to the workforce. I think we really need to expand and offer more for STEM, vocational training, expand school choice as well. Because, what I'm seeing right now, students are coming out with, at least the ones in my class, they're grossly underprepared for the real world. I mean, many of them have never balanced a checkbook. They don't know how to do their own budget. So there's a lot going on, which I just find very concerning.
Okay, since you bridged into higher education there, let's talk about your website. You say your priority will be making college more affordable again, or making it affordable again. How? And you say you prefer to start with cutting administrative expenses. Any other? That's a fairly boilerplate, easy one to throw out there in a political world. But I mean, that only gets you but so much. I mean, the overhead in anything, particularly labor, is your highest level of cost. What are your thoughts on really getting into the affordability of college?
Well, just throwing more money at it isn't going to be the answer. And you're looking at what's been contributing to the rise of college education. It's not the people who are actually doing the instructions. It's not the teachers. Those wages have remained relatively stagnant. In fact, if you look at the increase of adjunct faculty, which I am, that's, it's not because of the teachers. It's because of the administration overload, as schools have added many programs, developments, and activities which aren't focused on education. If you just look at the statistics of how colleges have expanded, not just from the teaching role, but on the administrative role, there's administrators doubled and tripled in size. Again, these are people who are not teaching students. They're more in various support capacities, earning six figures. I think we need to, if I ran my law practice like that, I go broke in a week. Schools need to tighten down and focus on their primary mission, which is the education of students, because you have an entire generation that's graduating into debt. They can't buy a house, they can't get a mortgage, they can't get a car. And many of the students who are graduating love to be entrepreneurs, have business ideas. They're too busy paying off student loans. I'd rather see them, take their time, take their energy, and focus it in the economy and, be entrepreneurs rather than just, paying off student debt for the next 20, 30, 40 years.
What's the relationship like between adjunct professors and I guess tenured professors? I mean, how are they getting along? I mean, obviously, that's cut. I mean, that's sort of like taking their job. And you mentioned that there's some gaps in what they have been able to produce, and you're seeing seniors that don't even know how to write a research paper. So, how is the relationship? How are they working together? And what are some of the opportunities there?
Well, I want to be very clear. I think I work for a great department, the Homeland Security at BCU, but I really don't have any professional relationship with my colleagues there. My role as an adjunct is pretty simple and limited. I show up, I teach a class for the night, I go home, I respond to students' emails, grade papers, but I do the same thing week after week. And personally, as an adjunct, with my own business to focus on the military commitment, I love it in the sense that I don't have to deal with administrative headaches, setting school policy. I get to deal directly with the students. So for me, being an adjunct relieves a lot of the burdens that other members on the faculty have to deal with. And
Right.
occasionally we might, send an email for collaboration. That's very rare. I pretty much just stick to my class and focus on my students rather than any of the campus politics, which I personally enjoy staying
Are
out of.
are are adjunct professors the Uber, Lyft, and Airbnb of higher education?
Well, again, I wanted to be smirched my employer, but that is
No.
certainly
Just the reality in the marketplace. Because look, these
fair criticism.
policies, these policies manifest themselves, or the realities manifest themselves, and they become policies. So we have to be looking at these things from a holistic perspective, like what's really going on. I mean, you see these disruptive technologies taking place. Are adjunct professors, not necessarily at VCU where you are, is that part of what's going on? They're driving down the costs.
That again, a lot of professors, and from reading from the newspaper magazine Inside Higher Ed, a lot of tenured professors make the argument that universities are going in the direction of adjuncts who have less of a commitment to the university's long-term well-being, and that way less full-time tenured professors are being hired. I'm aware of that argument being made. but I don't have much personal knowledge on that insight. As I said, as an adjunct, my role is pretty limited to showing up, teaching, then leaving, and working with the students. So I really wouldn't feel too qualified to go too far down that road. I am
Okay.
aware that's a very popular criticism. I definitely think it should be
No,
looked
it
at
was more of
more.
an observation. I was like, wait a second. There's this disruption going on, and then a lot of universities are hiring. There you go, go Army.
It's the only clean one in the rack. I need to do the dishes.
Yeah, there you go. We have this need to reduce costs as you suggest, and administrative overhead is a way to do that. And do you see a direction of going towards more adjunct professors or adjunct teachers at the colleges?
Possibly. I think, adjunct, the strength of an adjunct is that we're not academics necessarily, or 100% academics. We bring real world experience. When I teach my law enforcement students, how to go about arresting someone, when you get a warrant, I can give actual examples of cases saying, if you mess up, you'll lose the evidence, it'll get suppressed, like I just had happen last week. That's the advantage of an adjunct faculty. But you still
Okay,
want people who are full-time dedicated researchers. It's just a matter of finding the right balance between the two.
there you
In
go.
theory, adjuncts are great in that they can keep costs down. For example, in my class of 35, I get paid about 2,700 per semester. So I probably make more money at Starbucks, but that's not why I teach. It's for I enjoy
Well,
working with
you don't make
students.
much more in the House of Delegates, so you're setting yourself, you're lowering the bar and achieving it.
Well, but you got to accomplish something out the gate. But as I say, one student's fees or tuition for my class per credit hour, one student of the 35 will cover my salary. Then you have to ask, what are the other 34 paying for? If you
Right.
throw in the out-of-state students, I mean, my class generates for the school well over 100,000 a year. I'm not worth that much, I assure you. That money's going somewhere, and I really
Right.
don't think it's going directly to the student's education.
Okay. You brought up public safety, law enforcement. I had a conversation with a longtime member of the General Assembly who is no longer in the General Assembly. Comes from a prosecutorial criminal defense background. And we were talking about how in the 90s we ramped up all of our crime efforts to be tough on crime. Is it time to review mandatory minimums and abolition of parole to see if it's been effective or not?
I think you should always review. You want to know if what you're doing is working, whether it's confirmation that's working or if there's a need for change. I do see a lot of things in the criminal justice system that I find concerning and problematic, but I see other things that are working fine and you wouldn't want to change. You just have to go with things on a case by case basis.
Well, to that extent, one of the difficulties in right sizing, again, we did this in the regulatory area, if we did this in criminal justice, if we right size the penalties, if it shows that we're mandatory minimums are too high for the good that they're doing, are you open to reducing some mandatory minimums?
I'm certainly open to it because it really ties the hands of the court. Because the legislators with best of intention will write a law with a mandatory minimum that will fairly and accurately cover 99% of situations. The problem is for that remaining 1%, the prosecutors, or I should say the judges, have their hands tied, and the defendant has really no choice but to hope for prosecutorial discretion. Which, again, working around here, I think we've been pretty lucky. Have some pretty reasonable people, but not always. And that for those select few, it can really run into a few hardships where, yeah, we have courts of laws, not courts of justice. We follow the rules, and the rules don't always lead to a just or fair outcome. I mean, classic example, I had a case where a girl felt too uncomfortable to drive home after drinking on New Year's Eve. She got in her car and did not drive anywhere. She just sat in her car running it for heat because it's New Year's Eve and it's freezing out. Well, legally, that's drunk driving. And she was convicted of a DUI even for sitting in a parked car for well over an hour, not driving because she didn't feel safe driving.
Even without
That's
it being
not
engaged
common
in that.
sense.
Yeah, yeah. You're not driving if you're in park, right?
Legally, you could be convicted of drunk driving if you're seeing it.
No. I'm not disagreeing with you. You talk about in that instance, you talk about the opioid epidemic, and it's Henrico, Richmond. We've seen a lot of press play on this. Do drug courts work, and should we expand them in the Commonwealth?
I think they work. I don't have my experience is as involved as I'd like it to be for drug court, but so far what we're seeing has been positive. I think we should definitely expand it, but we should be very careful about reviewing it. Because again, we're dealing with people the people who end up in drug court are the ones who are suffering the most from addiction. So they're the ones who need the most treatment. Personally, I'd like to see us get people the help they need for addiction before they can even enter the justice system. That'd be the best case situation.
How do we do that?
I think we have to expand treatment programs, options, education, and as far as how it leads to this, a lot of people start out because of addiction from just being lawfully prescribed narcotics from physicians. I think we need to develop programs, maybe training, work with the medical community to help people see if there's alternatives to narcotics, and when people are no longer being prescribed, options to turn it off. Again, to give a story, I had a client who worked as a prison guard for a number of years, was savagely attacked by an inmate. She had 7 surgeries over 7 years to recover and was given a high dose of narcotics over that period. She was a moral, upstanding citizen, but after 7 years of narcotics, she developed an addiction and needed help and treatment. Unfortunately, the courts got to her before a treatment program.
When we go down this road in politics, a lot of people in elections will accuse someone who takes a different view of being, even in issues like this, soft on crime. The difficulty is, we're trying to address a very difficult issue. How do you counter the soft on crime charge?
I don't care if people call me soft on crime or hard on crime. I care about getting results, accomplishing things that'll help people. And if we for things of violent crime, sex offenders, maybe we do need to get tougher on crime and increase sentencing there. But for addiction, I mean, the people who say soft on crime should walk in my shoes and work directly with the clients I have. I have clients who are so desperate to escape their addiction that they try killing themselves. These people need help. I had a scholarship student at VCU who fell into depression, had some other mental health issues, fell into heroin and other substances, and tried killing himself. One of the most brilliant people I ever met. So I don't look at these people, yes, they are breaking the law. These people are value to society. They're good people who fell into hard times. I'd like to get them the help they need. And if that means I'm labeled soft on crime for wanting to help people with addiction, then I welcome that label. Now, if you want to talk about, being tough on crime for people who are actually violent, people who are commit acts of lying, cheating, stealing, crimes of dishonesty, then we can have another conversation on that route. So I think we're a little soft on crime. I like to see things being toughened up for people who engage in morally, I shouldn't say questionable, just morally outrageous offenses like lying, cheating, stealing, violent crime.
Well, I think that's one of the problems we have in our body politic today is we broad brush a lot of significant complex issues and boil them down to bumper stickers, statements that can unfortunately do more harm to issues than good. One of the reasons why we partnered with some of your colleagues at VCU, the Wilder School, at our program, which you attended at the state capitol. What were your thoughts from that program, and did you learn anything?
I learned quite a bit. You hear a lot about automation and what the effect that'll have on the economy. But it's another thing to actually see the charts being posted where it just shows the impact it'll have on the workforce. I think we really need to, it goes back to education. We need to ensure that we have a workforce that will be trained and ready for not the economy as it is today, but the economy as it will be tomorrow. We need to make sure our universities and K through 12 are tailored that way to provide the jobs that will be needed here in Virginia in the near future.
And that's a difficult prediction, isn't it? We don't know what the jobs are going to look like. So how do we forecast creating educational systems based on economies and industries we have absolutely no idea what they're going to be? I mean, I can pick up my phone right now and an iPhone, and an i6 is already out of date. 10 years ago, these things weren't even thought of, and yet it's revolutionized our economy. How do we go back to education? I guess then get to that point.
Well, there is no 100% perfect answer, but it's kind of like that. We have to forecast the budget each year. You have to look at, talk to the business leaders, talk about what their needs are going to be, talk to educators, what's the current situation is. You have to have a dialogue going, and it is a prediction. And just like the weather, it's not going to be 100% accurate, but it's better than going in completely blind and just hoping for the best.
Right. On your website, you talk about Immigration in your district, it's a very diverse district. A lot of folks from South Asia um, see it every day. I mean, it's a very vibrant economy out in the far West End. What are your thoughts on immigration relative to your district?
Well, I think immigration in general is a great thing. My grandparents came over here. My wife's parents actually are survivors of Auschwitz. They were lucky enough to come to
Wow.
the U.S. Now, my view though is pretty simple. If you're willing to leave behind your country of origin, everyone you know, come to the U.S., start from scratch, and build from scratch. That if you have that drive ambition, I want you here. Welcome. I just ask that you do it legally. If you can't even enter the country following the law, what does that say about your willingness to follow the law once you're here? So again, immigration is going to be a great thing. You can bring new people, new ideas, new workers here. But I just want it to be done legally so we know who's coming in and can keep track and make sure that, of course, Virginians will always come first.
Well, you mentioned wanting to come here of your own volition. A lot of the federal statutes, as you know, are written for those who came here without their consent, children brought over or into the country through the no fault of their own. It wasn't their decision. How do you draw that distinction in law?
That's a tough one. It's a real heartbreaker because think back to the U.S. Supreme Court decision Plyler v. Doe, where it ruled that children of illegal aliens have access to the K through 12. We don't want to punish anyone for actions that are beyond their own control. I mean, the parents absolutely are responsible for that, and I think they should be sent home. I generally think the children should stay with the family. I don't want to break apart families, so the parents are being removed, and the children should go as well. I get it. That's a very heartbreaking decision, but we are a nation of laws and they should be followed. As far as writing those laws and how they work, I guess I'm lucky enough to run for the House of Delegates, though, and not U.S. Congress, so I wouldn't be writing them at this stage.
Well, one of the things you're going to find in politics, especially as you get involved with being a candidate, and you're young, you're going to be involved for a while. You become a center of influence, a sphere of influence, and your congressman, Congressman Brad or Congressman Garrett, depending upon how the lines are drawn going forward, they're going to listen to their elected officials or their folks who are involved at the party level. So how you run this campaign and how it impacts your campaign is going to be felt throughout the federal races. So it does have an impact, and there from time to time issues do come up, whether you're paying in-state tuition and the like. But let's move on to healthcare. Big issue. What are your thoughts on healthcare, Matt?
I think it's a mess. Uh, my wife's a physical therapist. My father's a physician. So
Oh,
growing up and even today, I'm always hearing about all the problems going on. Completely opposed to Medicaid expansion, though, because again, look, I want people to get health care. I want them to have affordable health care. But I think there's a huge problem with this system right now, which is controlled large part through the government. I like to see the government take a step back and allow the free market to come in there. I think the free market will do a much better job than the government at providing quality health care to people. So again, this is in part, I understand there's House of Delegates, state legislature was looking at expanding Medicaid, which I'm completely opposed to. But again, a lot of this is federal. I think this entire system needs to be completely reworked. Among other things, one of the main reasons why I'm opposed to government involvement is just the increase in fraud. My wife's a physical therapist. She estimates that at least 10% of her patients are faking it for disability and workers' comp claims. That's staggering to hear that 1 in 10 of the people she's seen are, if not faking, at least exaggerating it to get increased benefits. So we have a lot going on, and a lot needs to be completely reworked here because the system is broken. But I don't think more government's going to be the answer here.
so how do we provide health care for those caught in that funding gap between who qualify for Medicaid and don't have enough work to get private insurance? This is what the expansion was going to cover. Was this the working poor, if you will? And if the federal government says, look, states, you can take 100% of the money for this effort, you would still not be willing to pull that money down to help the working poor?
I would still be opposed to that because I don't think the reliance on the federal government is good for Virginia. I think if we become reliant on the federal government, they're more subject to, we lose a lot of our autonomy should we want to go a different path at some point in the future. So it might seem like an easy money up front. There's, the expression, there's no such thing as a free lunch. There would be costs later down the road. And I think, that, again, the entire healthcare system, where the whole notion that the only way to get healthcare is you have to have a job, which in itself should be completely removed from healthcare. I like to see options. I like to see diversity in the marketplace. I like to see more options come out. I find it disturbing right now that now you have to get government approval on your healthcare plan to begin with. It has to meet the standards set forth under Obamacare. So again, I can't pretend I have the answer to the healthcare situation right here. I can't say it's the current way we're going. It's not the right way to go. I mean, as mentioned, I'm in the military. I look at the VA system, which is completely controlled by the government, and that's a complete mess. Anyone who can opt out will. So that's why I get worried by government increasing its involvement in healthcare. I really think the free answer lies in the free market. A lot of businesses come up with their own plans. A lot of insurance companies come up with their own plans. Above all else, the medical community setting the tone for leadership.
Well, we have this system that if you're not insured, you still show up to a hospital, you get coverage. You go to the emergency room and they got to treat you. How are we going to, if people are continuing to not have insurance and continue to show up to hospitals, but a lot of rural hospitals in Virginia, how do that cost gets passed on to the premiums in the business community and people who buy their own insurance plans? How do we stem that cost? You talked about costs in education, and how do we control costs in healthcare?
Well, I think once again, why we should be asking, why are things so expensive in the first place? I mean, if you look at the way things are being charged in hospitals, it's through the roof. And that started with the government getting involved in the first place. And the government's the first place I can think of. I mean, not the government. If you were to call a doctor and ask how much is an X-ray, they can tell you over the phone how much an X-ray is. Well, pretty much any other business, how much is a sandwich? How much is a carton, a carton of apples? They can just tell you how much it is. It's not this complicated system. Now, directly answering your question about, this just goes why I think the free market is the answer. You take out a lot of the ambiguity, it adds up certain prices, drive prices down for those who can pay. Now, I think that as far as the people who can't pay, you used to have a very good system of social support and social networks. I don't know if you read the book Bowling Alone. It's about the breakdown of social structure where people take care of one another.
Let's say
I
that
think
again.
people
Bowling, as in bowling ball, bowling alone.
bowling alone.
Not
Basically,
not
it's the
not, not
idea
spell Bill
that
bowling. Bowling
not
alone.
like Bill. It's just a book. It's the idea that community. We used to be identified as a community, look after one another, and with the increasing role of government, let's say in healthcare, people say, you know what, I don't need to worry about my friends and neighbors. The government will take care of it. My father has been a physician in the Richmond area since I believe the early 70s. He used to volunteer regularly. I forget the name of the hospital downtown Richmond. It's an expectation that's a member of the medical community. You would volunteer and provide assistance to people who can't afford it a certain amount of time. Same way as currently I am a member of the Virginia State Bar. I'm expected to do at least 50 hours of pro bono service a year. I think there's a moral obligation where members of the community should step up rather than just ceding your moral duty to help others to the government.
Well, those are very noble thoughts. But it's difficult to put that into policy when 70%, almost 70% of every dollar spent on healthcare is paid for with Medicare or Medicaid, and that is an overwhelming amount of market orientation towards federal government, federal purchasing power.
Well, I guess
Uh,
look at the U.S. We spend more than any other nation per capita on healthcare, but we're not getting the best results by any means. Per dollar spent. I think we need to focus on why things are so expensive in the first place, rather than just throwing more money at it. Let's figure out why things are getting so expensive. I think the reason has to do much with because of government interference and involvement. But let's do a review of that rather than just throwing more money at an already hyperinflated market for healthcare.
One of the areas of Virginia government that I think has worked well over time is this notion of the Virginia way, an incremental approach to some problems, rather than the big comprehensive bills. Are you of the mind to go in a more incremental approach or large comprehensive pieces of legislation? What do you prefer? What
It
do you think
depends
works
on
best?
the issue. It's hard to give us a yes no answer without an example. I can just tell you by nature I'm very cautious. I like to study a problem very carefully from all angles before going in. So I would say I can definitely be more incremental, nothing too radical, unless there truly is a drastic emergency situation. But my inclination would be more incremental than just
Okay.
jumping
The
in.
probably the one that's going to come up, should you be fortunate enough to win the nomination in the general election, would be tax reform. What are your thoughts on tax reform in the Commonwealth?
Definitely needs reform. Now, again, I think we're generally a well-run Commonwealth. Generally have been blessed. We have pretty low taxes. But as I said, I'm spending way too much money in my business trying to hire someone to do payroll to make sure I get the tax code right without screwing that up. And I have concerns if that were to go wrong, it's a case where you're, I shouldn't say guilty, but you're responsible for that, and it can be a very costly error. So I'd rather simplify things, streamline the system, make things much easier for people to pay taxes, as well as keeping the taxes low in general. But
So
again, aiming to simplify it.
are you in favor of moving towards more of a consumption-based tax system versus income with credits and debits and exemptions, and just say, we have a consumptive-based, service-based business. Everyone pays X% off the top at point of sale and be done with it. That seems to be the easiest, simplest way to do it. Isn't that right?
Maybe. Again, this is something I think a lot about, but I'm still not sure because I want more time to look at it, analyze it before jumping in to something like that.
Well,
I definitely agree that there need to be changes. Maybe we need to find a way to simplify it,
yeah,
the way that's fair to everyone across the board.
it's certainly a thoughtful answer, and I appreciate that. But at the end of the day, the business leaders around the Commonwealth are going, okay, what's this guy going to do? What's he's going to base his decisions on? What what at those points, we've talked in some hypotheticals, of course, as politics. What makes Matt Pinsker make decisions?
What will do the good for the people of Virginia? That's it. I'm very goal oriented. I want to get results. I want to accomplish something.
Okay.
Whether it's helping people, make Virginia more business friendly so that people like myself can start a business that'll allow you to afford for your family. If you have an idea or want to be an entrepreneur, go for it. Or if you already have a business, you'll be able to grow and expand it. I want Virginia to be number one once more for doing business in America. That's what I like to see happen. And
Okay.
anything I do will be directed towards that.
Well, that's a great segue to a conclusion and a wrap up. Matt, why don't you give us a summary, give us a send off, give us a pitch.
I have to be honest with you. One of my, I enjoy a good opening as the attorney, but I've never been good at closing statements, so I'll give it a whirl. Well, thank you for listening today. I said, I started a business here. My father had a business, and my grandfather had a business. My grandfather actually moved his business from Virginia all the way up to New York because he wanted a more business-friendly atmosphere. This was back, I believe, the 50s or 60s. My father actually closed his business as a medical business because he got tired of dealing with the regulations, taxes, and the headache of it all. I personally spend way too much time dealing with the regulations and paying too much in taxes that I'd rather spend back on my business. And I don't think I'm the only person out there who feels that way. So if you want a candidate who will look to make Virginia more friendly for business, look to cut regulations, keep labor costs low, to work for policies that are common sense that will help you grow your business, expand it, or start one if that's what you're looking to do, then I'm your candidate because I've walked the walk, as has my entire family, and I know exactly what you're dealing with. So I'm going to ask for your support and your vote as we can make Virginia the number one place in America to do business again once more. Thank you.
Matt, well done. Enjoyed the conversation. Wish you the very best of luck. As we do all the candidates who engage with us at Virginia Free, we want the very best public servants, regardless of party, regardless of district. And we wish you the very best. I know it's a long, arduous campaign trail ahead of you, and we won't take up too much more of your time. Thanks for coming with us today.
Enjoyed it. Take
Thank
care.
you, Matt. Best of luck.